All right, so I just wanted to thank everybody for making it out to the seating training here. My name is Brad Zerr. I'm from Ogallala. A little bit about, does any of you know what the product specialists really do? It's a brand new position that they just started last year. Gina was the first one that got hired on last year, and then it was me. We started both at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of read you my job summary. Is that we are here to build relationships between locations and end users and the company. We provide support, training, and guidance to both the employees and customers for our particular product that we're assigned to. So we have a whole list of the objectives and details, but I just picked 5 of them here. Developing industry-leading knowledge and expertise on the assigned product, setting up and conducting training and demonstrations like we're here today with both the employees and customers, so little clinics and things like that. Provide support for all departments, not just sales, but also service and parts and AMS, a little bit of administrative as well. We're supposed to be acting as the point person for questions regarding our particular product. So, and also to provide John Deere factory groups with information pertaining to new products, new improvements, enhancements, and future enhancements. And this is kind of where you guys come in, because you guys work with this stuff every day. So if there's anything that's like, yeah, I wish it was like this, or the customer wishes it was like this and I agree, or something like that, or this needs to be changed. I'm sure there's a lot of that, right? When you're working on stuff. A lot of things that would make it a lot easier. That's where we come in to try to get in good with the factory groups, to be able to just have them on the cell phone, to just give them a call and say, hey, this is what we're having a real big problem with. And customers don't like it, technicians don't like it, parts don't like it. It's getting hard and really difficult. So we'd be able to kind of act as I guess a bridge between the dealerships and Deere, because sometimes that can be a pretty rickety bridge once in a while, especially with new equipment coming out. So far we have myself, which is the product specialist for air seeders and planters, and then we have Regina Nargis out of Sydney, who does harvest and hay equipment. And since we were the guinea pigs and trying to figure out how this is working and being able to do these demonstrations and things like that, they're trying to bring on some more product specialists for tractors and sprayers and tillage equipment. So in the future, I think that we'll be seeing a little bit more product specialists around. And even with that, it might even be, we might have one specialist, they might even split mine up, one specialist particularly for planters and one for air seeders, or splitting Regina's up, because I know harvest and hay equipment, that all kind of ties in the same area and time, so that can get a little hectic. So I handed you guys out this course overview. It's basically, like I said before, it's just a kind of an outline of what's going to happen. The session is designed to share ideas and knowledge with everybody, including myself. So, you know, I can't stress this enough. You guys are here to talk to each other, talk to me, so that we can all share our knowledge. Because I know some of us, it's a long ways from Gordon to Imperial, and so some practices are a little bit different between those areas. And I know, especially with working, especially in the Colorado and Kansas stores, that you see air seeders are a big thing down there, and you don't see hardly any soybeans or nothing, just because it's too dry. And then as you start to get up here, air seeders are a little less common. The planters are the biggest things up here, where there's a couple air seeders out there, but not as much as what they have down there. So this is a way for us to kind of switch the knowledge around, be able to, so that if the time comes where the air seeders are starting to move up, if it gets drier, or we have to switch on, the customers have to switch on their practices, then we'd be ready for it. And that goes with planners down south too. They do a little bit of planning too, but not as much as what you guys do up here. So, just going through the outline here. I have what the purpose of it is. We're here to identify, and this is for just this is for everybody's, all the training sessions, both air seeders and planners. So we're going to identify the types of air seeders and planners. That's kind of what we're doing as far as today, and in January with the planners, we're just going to focus on air seeders today and planners in January. And the reason for that is it's kind of we're going to try to identify the types. That way, when we start to get into more technical stuff, you'll be able to know the difference between an 1830 and an 1870, which most of you probably know already, but some of us new ones here are having a little hard time with getting that down. Service, inspect, and solve common issues that are going on. I had the opportunity of traveling around after most of the drilling season was done, down to southern locations as well as up here. Chit-chatted with some customers talking about what kind of issues that they're going with. Most of it blockage monitors, a lot of it electrical, AMS stuff, very minimal mechanical issues, which is pretty good. But there's a couple out there, so we're just going to kind of tackle that, and I'll bring up kind of the common issues that from the customers that I've talked to that are having some trouble with. So, and then I know with air seeding is not much, but I know with planners there are unlimited amount of attachments, different things that go on all these. So we're just going to kind of go through the ones that are common in this area as far as the attachments go. Some of the requirements that I wanted, since this is kind of a technician-based overview, I expect the technicians to be able to be proficient in DTAC, service advisor, know the ins and outs, submitting cases, looking up cases, doing some research on stuff like that. I'm still working on things like that. I took a DTAC class and still getting used to that. So as far as if you're a technician ways, you should already know the application components like fluid power, hydraulics, electronic components, all that stuff, horsepower, things like that, and also JDU classes. There are lots and lots of different classes you can take on JDU. Most of you already know that. The two that I picked for here were basically the one that was supposed to be due today. How many got the seeding introduction platform taking that done? Most of you. How was that? It was all right. Yeah. It's pretty long, isn't it? It goes through a lot of detail with all the stuff, and that's kind of the reason why I chose that class. Even though it is kind of based on the sales part of it, it's still good to be able to know the different stuff, because initially, how many of you had customers ask you about something when you're out there fixing their equipment? Or like say if you're fixing a 1890 and he says, well, what do you think of that 1830? Have you ever had customers ask you that? Not really? With the southern stores, they're all like, oh yeah, I get it all the time. But I think it's a good way, because if in time that a customer would be able to ask you, you'd be able to say, well, this is the reason why this is the way it works, and this is the reason why it's either common up here or not so common up here. And then you say, talk to your salesman about that. I bet is that what you do, talk to your salesman? Kind of? Or do they even ask questions? They're just ready to get going again? Okay, so going through, and correct me if I'm wrong, we can add to this list too. These are probably the most common air seeder types that we have, not just in the southern stores, but also up here. I'm kind of thinking in Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas area, the Midwest kind of area. So would you add anything to this that's as far as what's the most common in this, not necessarily a particular area, but in this region? Have any of you worked with 1870s? What about a 730 level lift? You guys heard of that? Never heard of those? Okay. Well, these are mainly, like I said, the ones that are most common. They have, you don't have very many separate fertilizer placements, although I know Billy's got one, and there's Casey's got one down, a customer that's using it down in Flagler. Do you guys have any separate fertilizer placements? Imperial? Bridgeport? Not much? Yeah. 1830s are really common up down south. I know Billy's got one. Do you guys see any 1830s up here? The hoe drills? Yeah. 1990 CCS. I know Imperial's got a lot of them. Yeah, I've had to work with you guys a lot with that. I know Bridgeport's got one. That was my first call ever with Frank. Yeah. Gordon, you guys got some up there? Yeah. They don't have down south. They don't have the 1990 CCS. Which is kind of, to me, that's kind of uncommon because as much wind they get down there, you would think that they would want no-till drills down there. But surprisingly, the 1830 is the most popular down there. The 1890s, any up here? That one's kind of scattered all throughout the 1890. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. The 1890 is essentially a no-till air drill. And I'm going to ask you guys a question. What's the advantages of no-till? Is there moisture? Less compaction? Good. Less erosion? Awesome. That's pretty much all the things that I had down. Less passes through the field. Economical. Residue management. Keep that residue. That ties in with the moisture. So those are kind of the biggest advantages of having no-till, because a lot of people like to be able to, especially now in this climate that we're in, is that once the ground is exposed and it doesn't have much moisture or even residue on it, if you do get a little bit of moisture, it's gone like that. All right? So a lot of people like this because not only does the residue retain that moisture, it keeps the ground cooler, and then it provides a insulation during the winter, and it also keeps that topsoil from wind erosion. Anybody heard of microorganisms? I took a class in college about, basically it was just all about soils. So they call them microbes. They're the little organisms that break down, that decompose and create basically a flourished topsoil. So that's one big thing that no-till air drill farmers like to see. Now with this particular air seeder, there are some big advantages of this one, the 1890, is that it provides a wide range of sizes, working widths, from 30 feet to 60 feet. So with the 60 feet, you'd be able to get, I know there's one in Sydney. I kind of helped a little bit with that. You'd be able to get more work done, more acres done per day, reducing that risk for that window of opportunity that most customers want to try to stay inside with the weather and all. Another advantage of this 1890 is that it pulls an air cart. Now, most of the time, and this is another question here, box drills. Do you guys have a lot of box drills still? You see a lot of box drills still? Why is that?
They're cheap.
They're cheap, yeah.
Easy to maintain.
They are, very easy.
Easier to move them around.
So why would someone choose an air seeder versus a box drill?
Capacity.
Capacity, yeah. Do you think the air seeder is a little more efficient? Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big advantage, especially with this air cart, is that people can carry bulk product. They range from 195 bushels to now they got this year came out was the 550. That's a lot of product. That's fertilizer or grain. So that's a big thing. It reduces that fill up time, more time in the field. But there are some disadvantages with this drill. That's a lot of hardware on the frame. I mean, each of these individual rowan units have a lot of different components on it. So this is actually pretty heavy. So with it being so heavy, it might be a little bit hard on compaction. Some customers don't really want a heavy drill, like a 60-footer would be pretty heavy, versus like an 1830 that's a little bit lighter, that doesn't have as much. Also is the serviceability on these. Ike, I'm going to pick on you. On a 1990, it's pretty crowded underneath the tank, and even getting down in here to grease these Zerks on here or service any of these things, it's pretty difficult, isn't it? Yeah, each one of these row units have, and correct me if I'm wrong, 3 grease Zerks on them, which the manual calls, there's 2 of them that you only grease annually, and there's 1 that you grease every 50 hours, right? The closing wheel right here is the one you grease every 50 hours. Now here's a kind of a trick question. Is the book always right? Not necessarily, no. That was one of the biggest issues that we've had down in Leota and Cheyenne Wells, is that the customers would grease these closing wheels. What happens after greasing them and they ran them into the dirt over time? They would get dirt filled up in them. It would cake. Then their closing wheels wouldn't work. So they had open trenches right behind them. So sometimes, and Mark Booty said this when I was down there doing their customer clinic, is that he said that you just grease them annually. But if you do grease them every 50 hours, you have to keep them greasing them. You have to stay on that. You can't grease the 50 hours and then after 100 hours grease them again. You have to just keep that grease going through them. Customers don't like greasing. I know, because that was my job in high school. I somehow always got grease all over me, more in the Zerks than. So the serviceability on these are a pretty big disadvantage. But the thing is that why do customers choose this is because, like you said before, there's a lot of farmers that are switching to that no-till practice so that they can keep that topsoil there. So when they put it in there, it retains that moisture, it protects the topsoil, and we get good yields out of it. So if it does rain, that residue will be able to keep that moisture in. But, like we said before, there is a downside. Over the years of no-till farming, you have a lot of compaction through going with combines and grain carts and trucks and air seeders, sprayers. So once in a while they have to be able to break that hard pan out of there, because once that compaction pan gets on the bottom, the roots fan out instead of go down. And then that's how it competes with the rest of the crops that are in there, planted, drilled in there. They have strip tills today that some of them are specifically for no-till. I'll use my dad as an example. He's got one that's a no-till strip till, I guess. I don't know what that's the right way to say for it, but the knife blade is designed to where all it does is just kind of lift it up, and he uses that to put in the soil nutrients that it needs, like anhydrous ammonia like you see, and phosphorus, fertilizer. And that's another downside of that, because if you no-till, you can't put in, you can't go in with the sweeps and then put in phosphorus, because that's tillage practice, right? You have to do some sort of tilling. So strip till is a lot of, or one trippers or whatever they call them. We call them strip tills. You guys call them one trippers. It's that it's able to get underneath, break up that hard pan, restore the nutrients in the soil, but with minimal surface disturbance. And with another disadvantage of it is that if you don't have any sweeps or tilling it up, then you have to resort to herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, spraying. And chemical can get really expensive, especially if you spray the weed and it comes back a couple weeks later, or you don't get it all. Next I'm going to talk about is the 1990 CCS. Some of you had a lot of experience with this. It's basically the same tool as the 1890. The only difference is that it has a tank on it. And that's probably why a lot of customers want that, because they don't want to pull that big, heavy air cart behind it. It only goes from 70 to 100 bushel though. It doesn't go any higher than that. So, and then another thing is that the 1990 has very small working widths. It only goes up to a 42 foot. So some of your farmers, like I'll say Frank for example, he drilled his with barley, and that air seeder worked perfectly for that, because that was basically what he was using it for, right? The 1990 is economical. It's cheaper than getting a 1890 and an air cart that goes with it. But you have the smaller working widths. So it's great for farmers that have smaller acreage, that don't need to spend a lot on getting an air cart or whatever. That'll work great for them. Some of them would like to go to an 1890 and do. It's all about preferences with some customers. There are more spacing options with this. And you can also, when a salesman configures this or builds it from the factory, you can choose between a dual rank, which is what you see here, or a single rank. So if they're doing any type of specialty or products, or of course you don't really see very many single ranks up here. Most people have double ranks, dual ranks, right? Imperial? The seed metering on this is almost just like the 1910 commodity air cart. The only difference is that it has, instead of kind of a gravity feed, it relies on this meter to kind of push it on out. Although the weight of the product helps with that. And then you have the agitation system right here. Most of the components that are in the CCS here are the same as what's in the 1910 air cart. You got your agitation system, you have tank level sensors, you have a meter wheel roller. The same basic principle goes in here. Air is produced in the plenum, pushes it through, creates a suction, pulls the seed down. It's all kind of the same basic design. It's just kind of set a little different. And what's different is this on the CCS is that it goes into individual rows, or I want to say secondaries, but on a 1990, I'll call them primaries, because if you have splitters, then I call the splitters secondaries. So most of the time, instead of having an 8 primary run system or a 4 or 6, where the big old tubes are underneath, it just has these smaller ones. And you can have 29 of them up there. So it drops the seed down into them, pushes them down. It's kind of the basic how it works. Most of you all know that. The meter rolls on these are a lot different though. They use the same basic type. It's just these are all plastic, I believe, right? They're not kind of that rubber composite like an air cart would have. So you have your 3 choices, not necessarily color coded. You got your low rate, that's good for sorghum and small seeds, grass seeds sometimes. Then you got your medium rate over here. It's good for wheat, sorghum. And then where you see most common around here is the high rate. Most people go with these white rollers, and that's good for wheat and soybeans, a little bit larger seeds. Can anybody, and Perry ought to know all this, and so does Bridgeport, but what are these? What are those for? Yeah. Yep. They're called metering gates. They rest pretty much right in here. They shut off individual rows if you want to. And also in the book it says that it's supposed to give a little bit better control over the application rate. So when it's fully open, of course we know it's all going to come through. It's not. But some people, and most customers up here, they just keep them open. I mean, is that kind of what happens? They're pretty much fully open. Or sometimes you don't even really notice them, they're there. But they're fully open, right? And the reason for that is because of some people like to drill bigger seeds like soybeans, yellow peas. They'll want to keep that fully open. Most people keep it fully open and just kind of change their transmission speed, transmission setting. But in the book, it gives a little more accurate control of the application rate. So when it's a quarter of the way open, it's good for small seeds. Halfway open, it's good for medium seeds, and fully open, it's good for large seeds. But like I said, around here, you don't see them change that. Unless they're doing some sort of calibration, then they'll close those. Because when you do a calibration, you don't close any of those. And I'm thinking of you put the bag behind the actual tube that you take out of the splitter and put the bag on the tube, right? In the tube in the bag. Well, if you didn't close the rest of them up, you're going to have that one row that you're calibrating not going to have any seed going into the row. There are one thing that both of the 1990 and the 1890 have in common are these 90 series openers. Hence the 90. 1890, 1990, it's the 90 series openers. Pretty simple, right? These 90 series openers, I'm just going to go through the basic, the components. Most of you know what they are, but I'm just going to go for new training's sake. The opening disc is at a 7-degree angle. And then you have the seed boot that sits right on the edge of it. Seed boot's designed to pretty much slow the seed down as it comes down the tube and gently puts it into the furrow. This little plastic flap, which I know you have to replace once in a while. Those wear out pretty quick. That keeps the seed from blowing out the trench, the furrow, because there's still air blowing out the bottom of that. So if we don't have that flap on there, and some people it works, some people it doesn't, especially when you got lighter seeds like wheat or barley, or the seed will just ricochet right off the bottom of that, and it's going to stay on the top. So that's where that flap is there. It's just a little plastic flap. And then behind that you have your packer wheel, your press wheel. That's designed to firm the seed in the seed furrow. And it has 3 settings on it, from 5 to 45 pounds. 25 would be kind of in the middle area. And that you can adjust. Most of you probably know this already, but right here. That's where you adjust that. And then behind that, you have your closing wheel. And the closing wheel also has 3 adjustments on it. From 26 to 43 pounds, that's behind here. It closes the furrow and kind of packs it in nice and neat. The gauge wheel, I kind of skipped. The gauge wheel here is kind of probably one of the most important components on there. Gauge wheel keeps the disc at an operating depth. The gauge wheel, and we've had some issues with this, I know, especially on no-till, this is a no-till drill. A lot of people, the ground is so hard that even if they do put that fully down, they have tons of downforce pressure, the frame's lifting up off the ground, that gauge wheel's, when they start moving, it won't spin. That much gap between them. So sometimes that gets a little difficult. But the thing about the gauge wheel is that it needs to be firmly on the ground, but it doesn't need to be forcefully on the ground, or it can't be off. And the way that you use to get that good to go is your rock shaft, your hydraulic downforce. And when you do that, there's been times where I've seen customers that have too much downforce, and so the gauge wheel is firmly on the ground, but it's so firm that it's just pushing the dirt out in front of it. It's not rolling over it. It's just pushing. Snow plowing, I call it. So a good way to, anybody know, what's a good indication that they have good hydraulic downforce on the rock shaft area? Does anybody know how to kind of check that? The rock shaft is a square like you see it there, right? And in order to get pretty much average to good hydraulic downforce, you want that square to be level. And I know in some situations it might be a little off, but you can see it here. It looks like it doesn't have enough downforce, right? So when that rock shaft, that square gets level, that's pretty good. And then you look at your gauge wheels from there. Make sure that they're firm. Question. Both the 1890 and 1990 have 90 series openers. True or false? True. Okay. Pretty simple. Why do customers purchase the 1990 CCS? Sorry? Seed box is on the drill. Good. They don't have to pull that air card behind it. They don't have to upgrade to a higher horsepower tractor. I've seen that. I'd like to get an 1890, but I don't want to switch to a bigger tractor. What else? Smaller, less weight, less compaction. Spacing's got a lot more options on spacing. Economical. It's cheaper. Good salesman? Yeah, maybe. All very good answers. Pretty much all the answers that I had. It means you're all listening. That's good. Okay, next we're going to be talking about is the 1830. The 1830 also, like the 1890, provides a wide range of widths from 31 to 61 feet. It's almost just like the 1890. It's just a little bit different. What's different about it? Hose. It's got the Packer wheels on the very back. Doesn't have 90 series openings. It's got those hose on it. What do they kind of use this for? Why would someone choose this other than an 1890? Because it's a what?
Conventional farm.
Conventional, yeah. Exactly. A lot of people like to use this because it's simple. You look at something like that, you don't see a lot of components in there. Doesn't it kind of look simple? It provides a little bit of a tillage. You can put different types of knife points, sweeps, permalock, spoons, all that stuff on there, on the ends of these hose here. And it's a lot cheaper, actually. It's cheaper from 1890. So, like we said, several changes. Instead of the 90 series openers, it doesn't have a rock shaft. It's a fixed frame. It's got these true position standards, which is the name of what these are called here. Spring trip force pressure is adjustable, I think. I believe it goes from, I think these go up to 550 pounds for a trip force. But these here you can see, and have any of you heard of Permalock? Do you have many customers that use that? You do? Do they like them? Do they stay on?
I haven't heard, but
Yeah.
had a few that come off, but they didn't get snapped on all the way.
Yeah. That's one of the most, I don't want to say controversial, but that's kind of the reason why customers tend to not get those. They don't, the way that they go on, they just kind of slip and snap on. Basically, for those of you that never seen or heard of these before, the original, it's just kind of like sweeps. There's two bolts that hold that on there, and then you have the air tube that goes behind it. Well, the Permalock is designed for fast change outs. It's got a frame that bolts on, that you bolt on once, and it's got a spring loaded. I don't even know what you call those springs in there. Yeah, kind of like a tension spring. And all you do is it comes with this special tool and a hammer, and there's a little hole here, and that's where the spring kind of comes in. You put that tool on there and push down, and you take a hammer and it knocks it right off. And that tension spring keeps it locked on there. So they're saying that it takes 5 times less time to change a Permalock out between just say a competitor one that's bolted on. And that's the reason why they're there. And we have a display in Ogallala. Do you guys have any displays in your guys' lobby or showroom that have that? I might bring that out next month so you guys can look at it. But that's the reason for them Permalock. Comes in spoons, sweeps, all sorts of different types. Those Packer wheels at the end, you can get in a different assortment of Packer wheels. Most of them are steel around here, and they travel right on top of the furrow. The knife points are designed to kind of push the soil away, drop the seed, and then bring it back in. Just kind of the way that the knife points or hose are designed is to move it, and then it goes around and back in, falls back in. And then these Packer wheels come behind it, keep it nice and firm, pack it in there. Some of them have the steel Packer wheels that go right on top of the furrow, and then there's some that have them on each side, just right on each side, and keep the top just basically loose. Does anybody have those type?
I think
Billy?
I think it was a single point.
Yeah. I think Billy's got the ones that just travel along top of it. There's one thing that the 1870, the 1890, the 1830, the 1835s, 1895s, all even a little bit with the 1990 are all basically have the same concept. I mean, it's an air seeder. What does it use? It's just air. That's why they're called air seeders, because that's what their primary movement power is air. So it's got hoses, primaries, secondaries. Primaries are the big hoses. Secondaries are the small hoses that come from the distributor up at top. That's what I call it, distributor. I'm not sure what the formal name of it is, but distributor down to the individual row units. It's very quick and easy to unhook. Right here, these nice couplers here that unhook there, make them easy for a switch change out if you want to put a smaller air card, or even just unhooking the thing. Most people keep them together anyway. But air travels down the tubes. Primaries are hooked to these towers, up, distributes the seed through. Secondaries take it to the row units. Pretty simple, right? What are these? Meters? Blockage. These are basically what most of the common issues are. A lot of issues are with either a short in the blockage sensor itself, or even in the wiring that's connected to them. But the good thing about these is that these sensors here are infrared beams instead of a flapper, I guess is what they call them, where when a seed falls through, it hits a flap, and then it tells it, okay, a seed's gone through because it hit that flap. This one uses an infrared beam that shoots across from one side to the other. So when the seed drops through, it interrupts that beam, and then that's what tells it, okay, the seed's gone through, it's okay. When that beam's not interrupted or isn't working, then it's blocked. Good thing about these is that they're all the same, whether you have all-run system or a primary one. Does anybody know the difference between all-run and primary only run? Blockage?
The fertilizers only have a primary run, they only have one blockage on them.
That's right. The primary only has only one sensor. So they might have 12 secondary hoses coming out of them, but when you see that there's only one sensor on one hose, you kind of look at that and you step back and say, well, you're missing a lot of sensors. But that's not the case. That's primary only. That's just to say if there's seed going through it anywhere. Some customers like it. It's cheaper than an all-run system. An all-run system has a blockage sensors on every single secondary hose. If a customer asks me, which do I prefer? I say all-run not because it's more expensive and we need to make money. I say because it makes it a heck of a lot easier to track where your blockage is. The thing is that when you have a primary only system, you could have blockage in six secondaries, but as long as there's seed going through this one, it won't tell you. You just have to get out and dig. So that's why I recommend all run, and you start to see that more and more, because now the sensors are a lot more inexpensive than they used to be. It's a lot of wiring. And when you see a lot of wiring, it kind of gets a little intimidating. And it's definitely hard. How many of you tried to go for wiring issues? You got to kind of follow the whole thing down, right? I had the opportunity of doing that. What actually, it wasn't these sensors are hooked to control modules, individual modules. The modules are hooked to controllers. controller is what sends the information back to the tractor. So we had a whole module going off. And then we got that, figured out what the problem was. It was the wiring harness. I wonder if I have a, I think I have a picture on my phone. But what happened was, and it took us, for some reason it took us a while because we started at the sensor and worked our way back. Well, if we would have just stepped back and looked at it, well, when he folded it up, it got on those bars that keep them firm when they fold up. He got his wiring caught in between there, just smashed it all. Like it wasn't even connected to any wires. It just smashed it. So
I found out on a lot of blockage on Billy's issues.
yeah.
And I did the same thing, started the sensor, and then next time he had it, all the modules are the same on all the blockages. All you have to do is make sure they're programmed, set up for the number. So if you have one whole tower that's reading instead of tracing wires, you can just switch that module and see if your problem switches. You just have to go in the setup and change it there. I had a controller in the module go out on, he lost everything.
Oh yeah.
And I traced the wire, nothing was wrong with the wires, and had power back at the main controller, but the controller, and it took out 2 modules with it. Why it did, I don't know. We changed it out, and it seemed to work fine.
Yeah, yeah. What do they call it? Swaposis or swapnostics. It's a pretty easy way. I know Ike's got a sensor tester, don't you? You have one that plugs into it and it'll beep at you. Those come in pretty handy. So, but yeah, sometimes, especially with electrical, it's really difficult to not only find out where it's at, but also find out why it caused that issue. And it could be anything from just a ECU not communicating with it. Did I get that right? ECU, electronic control unit. The 7 pins, when one of the pins is pushed out, that's another common issue. Had that in Imperial. Kramer had a pin that was pushed out. So things like that, it's really difficult, especially with electrical components, because it's really hard to find where the problem is, especially something that's mechanical, like pushing a pin out, because you don't necessarily think about that when you're looking for it. You think about, well, where's the short at? So 2 blockage sensors, the primary and all run. So when you see a lot of sensors, that's an all run system. I always recommend that. On those, and I just wanted to add the 1990s got blockage sensors, but also has row counters. That's what's on the very bottom of the tank, where it has the sensors on the pretty much after the splitters. When a row comes from the bottom of the tank out, if you have dual rank, it goes into a splitter. It splits the rows off into its individual units. Usually you'll have blockage sensors on either one or both of them. And then you have a counter underneath the tank where it counts the seeds for like population rate. Next thing I wanted to talk about is the 1910 commodity air cart. When you get an 1830 and 1890, this is generally what you need with it. And most of the time when salesmen order these, they are a pair. They usually come together. So, and there's a couple cases where I've seen to where maybe the air cart got switched with an air tool. So sometimes like a double chute. You guys know what a double chute air cart is? 2 primary hoses on it instead of 1 line. Was connected to an 1890 that was only set up for a single chute. So there's sometimes where an air cart would get mixed around. But the air carts are pretty much one of the most advanced air carts in the industry today. And I really enjoy working with these. They're pretty simple. They're easy to calibrate, easy to verify. Has anybody calibrated one of these before? What about verifications? Have you ever done a verification? I know Billy's got a list of those formulas on his little sticky note that he pulled out for me. That's a verification. That's how you find out exactly, even though you're calibrating it. I've learned that once I go out and help a customer set up, once I calibrate it, I then verify it. And a verification process is basically after you get done with the calibration process, and which we'll get into detail more of that next month. And we'll get more into detail with the verification. But what the verification process is that you stick the bag underneath, you turn the main drives on, and you crank the crank 100 times, and then you plug the weight into a formula with some other known factors like your circumference of your tire. That gives you a whole chart of what they call a K factor that you put in a formula. Yeah. Well, I know a lot of people ask me about, why do I have to crank it so many times? Well, that's what the book says. But initially, you can crank it 80 times if you want to. And some people say, okay, I got hydraulic on there, on my, for the hydraulic assist, for the calibration, that switch. So why don't I just use that? Well, you can't. Well, you can. But you have to know where that crank is when it starts and when it stops, where it stops. So if the crank's facing up and it goes around 100 times and all of a sudden it's over here, you got to add that quarter to that formula or else your application rate's going to be gone. It's going to be wrong. It's going to be off. So we'll get into more detail of that. We're going to do a little bit of math. Anybody good at math? Like math? Numbers? Okay. So I always recommend doing a verification afterwards because the calibration will tell you what transmission setting to set the transmission at, but it's assuming that it's going at 60 pounds per acre or whatever you have the desired application rate at. A verification is to verify that's exactly what you got coming out. So when you turn those main drives on, crank that crank, plug it in the formula, it'll actually tell you pounds per acre instead of transmission setting. And that's one of my projects I'm wanting to work on throughout my time is to figure out, okay, meter displacement value, how much grain or product is displaced per one revolution of that meter. How do they calculate that? How do you figure that out? Well, what it does is it rotates, and that sensor on there notes how many revolutions it's going. You add in the pounds, and then they'd use those two values and then calculate your meter displacement value. But if you're a brand new customer, you're saying, okay, well, I don't know if John Deere's displacement value that they've given me is truly accurate from where I'm at now. What's a good meter displacement value that I need to put in so that when I do calibrate, hopefully I'll be really close to what my monitor's saying. Because when I first went out, I just did a calibration, and about 50% of the customers that I helped set up said they were overseeding. There's lots of different variables of why that happened. Maybe the seed didn't settle. Maybe they just filled it up. Maybe their tanks weren't pressurized. But we'll get more into detail on that next month. So 195 bushels, the smallest one you can get. They came out with the 550 this year. And here's a configuration chart. 550 actually goes up in the toe behind. They don't go a toe between. I just put it there because it's empty space. But there's your 12 different types of combinations you can get. Some of them that have these 3 tanks here. I don't see them very much common out here, the 3 tanks. A lot of people use the 2 tanks. Question, can you put liquid in one of these tanks? You can, but you have to get a special tank to be able to use liquid. And most of the time it's these middle tanks. But you rarely see that. Everybody uses dry fertilizer, right? So, but you can get liquid in those. You just have to get a special tank. It costs a little bit more because they're not very popular. And when they can put wet fertilizer and same as using dry, why not use the dry? Because you can fill a whole tank with that. So they'll have specific hoses for that. Yeah, and most of the time if you order the seeder and air cart that has a liquid fertilizer tank, they'll put the liquid hoses on there. So most of them would, yeah, separate placement. So the thing is that I've read about it, I've heard about it, but I've never seen it in person. So it would be kind of neat to actually see what it looks like in person, or what the tank looks like, what's different about it, how they use it. So some of the top 5 advantages that for this air cart is, number 1, it's carrying bulk product. You can get more acreage done, less filling time. Easy to fill with that auger on there. Sometimes I know that was one thing that Kent was talking to me about. He asked me, okay, Billy really liked how fast it filled up. It was really easy to start up the auger. The only thing that was really tough for him was he had a hard time pulling it off and moving it around. And even, with the 2, it's got the main swing arm and then it's got that little one. Sometimes that little one can be real stubborn. Am I right? And for someone, and Billy he's in his 70s. So for those customers that have a hard time with that, you try to, and it's a perfect question of where I can go to the seeding group and say, hey, maybe for a future design that we can maybe put a swing arm assist on it. Hydraulic. Yeah, electric or
That's where you have trouble with it sitting on the cradle. Once it swings easy and you can handle all that, but getting it up. The cradle.
Yeah. And there might be something as far as like even having maybe he could put there's maybe a situation where you can put weights up on the top that makes it easier to lift up. But in a case like that, the way that they're designed is that they're perfectly balanced for that easy. But there's some times where it's, especially when you got a little grain or something in there, it's hard to pick up. That's a long way to go up from on the ground up to here. So even a hoist or something like that, and that's where we're trying to get in with the seeding group to be able to suggest things like that to help our customers with our products. It's easy to set up and to calibrate. You calibrated one, right? How long did it take you? Not that. Yeah. But if you were to calibrate, if you got real good at calibrating, how long do you think it would take you to calibrate? Well, let's just say if you had multiple bags, you calibrating both tanks, 30 minutes? Should take shorter than that. Should take about, should. Yeah.
That's what we did out there on the building. Once we initially figured out what we were doing,
Yeah.
it didn't take very long.
Should take you, if you get real good at it and do it a lot, it should take you 5 minutes. It's pretty fast. But, when you think about that, and that's what I've read, it should take you 5 minutes. But I'm sure the person that timed that was like, go! And he was running up and down because it takes a while to get up in the tractor and push the button and then go and then crank and then come back and push the accept button and then go and weigh it and get back up in there. It takes a while, but if you do it more often, it gets easier and easier, faster and faster because you know what to do. So, but the setup, has any of you set up one on the monitor? Yeah? It's pretty easy, or is it kind of difficult?
Yeah, once you figured it out,
Yeah.
it's not too bad, but The instructions in the book aren't the clearest.
Yeah.
If you haven't ever been around one, it's gonna take a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But
I know with some customers, they say they have a hard time finding the actual run page is pretty much the hardest part. And then with all those buttons on the side, they don't know which one to push. So, but once you're there, you follow the tabs, just put everything in from the drop down. Now, when you get into fertilizer, that's a little more difficult because they got a whole list there, but most of the time, the customer has a different fertilizer from that list. So therefore, you have to do a custom. That gets a little difficult. But we'll go through that next month. It's easy to clean out. Did you guys know that auger will move underneath that meter when you clean it out? Has any of you had the opportunity of cleaning it out? That auger is able to swing around and move underneath the meters. I've had that question. Those air carts should come with kind of a cap. When you take the meter cartridge out, you put that cap on there, and most of the customers have it hanging on somewhere on the frame. Some of them have it inside. You put that cap on there, open everything up, runs straight down in the auger, and you auger it back up into your truck or seed tender. So, also the rollers are easy to look at and interchange back and forth. So if you have an issue, it's not like you have to empty out your whole tank before you look at the meters. You can literally pull it out with product still in the tank. The only thing is you got to shut off your half-width disconnects, which a half-width disconnect on a 1910 commodity cart is almost just like those metering gates on that 1990. But you have 2 of them instead of 28, or something on that 1990. So here are your meter options. Color-coded. Yellow is the smallest application rate. Blue is the biggest. It's obvious, so you can see. More product will fit in that groove than a yellow one. The yellow one most people use for low rates of fertilizer or just low rates of what they're wanting to put out in the drill. Most common you see here are the black. Blacks are pretty much the most common because they have a wide range of the application rate, and it works pretty good with wheat, millet, and a lot of the products that most customers use work good in that black meter. Although I have seen a green. Green's a little bit higher. Higher rates of fertilizer. And then I have seen one blue. Has anybody seen blue? Blue's the highest and go up to like 260 pounds per acre. I've seen someone put fertilizer on that. I don't know how much the application rate, but just end up using that blue one. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of fertilizer. I call those meter rolls. They have different people call them different names. I call this the meter roll, and this whole assembly here I call a meter cartridge. And you could pull that out. It's real easy. Would you say it's pretty easy to clean out, pull out? It's no big issues. You just unlock the little lever, twist, and pull, right?
the issue comes when you put the spacers on it.
Say what?
The issue comes when you put your spacers on the meters.
Oh yeah, the tuning rings? Yeah.
Better off if you're gonna have to run 2 different styles of crops or something, is they're pretty pricey just to get another meter set up so you can just swap them, because I don't see how they're gonna come off that easy.
Yeah. How do you put them on?
Boil them.
You boil them?
You have to boil them and then they tap on them. They're not very fun.
Yeah. When I was working down in Leota for a while, I was helping Antonio with his, and he had a heat gun mounted facing down. And so what he did was that he got all of his rings that he needed, and he would stack them up and put them right underneath that heat gun. And then as those were heating up, he would take the cartridge apart, take all those snap rings off, take the rollers apart, and by the time he got done with it, those rings were hot, ready to go. So we put them on and use that special tool that they give you, which is just a PVC pipe. So, yeah, it's once you get those hot and good, they go on pretty easy, but when you take them off, that's a different story.
And they're not cheap to get a set of rollers either.
Yeah, yeah. Separate fertilizer placements. These you don't see very often, but we do have them around here. Mainly 1835s. I have not seen the 1895s yet. Does anybody know of any? 1835s, I've seen them. Basically, the only difference is they got a whole different. Sometimes people, especially on the 1835s, which is an 1830, just the 5 is the separate fertilizer placement. Some of them have an extra row to put them on, or some people use, I want to say aftermarket knife points that have different, to where they can put a fertilizer on each side of the seed or things like that. I've seen them do that. One by Alliance had one like that. He had 2 hoses going to the same opener, but the opener was designed to put the seed in the middle and the fertilizer on the outsides. Billy's got one, okay. The 1895 over here just adds this extra rank on the back. I believe that's 20-inch spacings. So that's kind of, it uses a whole, as you can, I don't know if you guys can see here, but here's a tower here and here's a tower here. So one's tower for the product, the other tower's for the fertilizer. So that's just to put it in a separate place. Separate fertilizer placement, just like a SFP. Some of the ones that are not very common out here are the 1870s, 730s. I put these box drills on here. They're all, like I just learned, there's quite a bit of them out here, the new ones. But you don't see a lot of them. I mean, you do have some customers that use them. Most of them that I've seen have the older style box drills that haven't quite upgraded to the air seeders, or they keep with the, I want to say a 9200. Is that one of an old one? But I put them on here that are not very common. And the reason for that too is that you do see some of them up here, but the thing is that I am a air seeder specialist, and I don't know if I'm necessarily supposed to be a specialist on box drills. But since it's tied in with the planters, I'm learning a little bit about them. So, but the 1870 and 730 level lift you don't see very much. 1870 here. What's different about the 1870 between the 1830? What do you see in that picture that's different? That's exactly right. Packer wheels are right behind the hoe here instead of in the back. This whole unit is called a Conservapack. Anybody heard that before? Conservapack? They talk a little bit about it in the air seeding introduction platform, I believe. But the Conservapack is kind of the 1890 and the 1830 put together. It's got the hose here, the knife points, but it's also got the packer wheel right behind it instead of at the end. This uses nitrogen charged for trip force and hydraulic oil. I have a little deal here on it, understanding accumulator charge pressure. So there's when it first leaves the factory, it's filled up with nitrogen in these canisters, and there's hydraulic oil in the lines. And when you get it to kind of a downforce pressure that you want, you lock that hydraulic oil in there so it doesn't go between in the tractor and whatnot. And what it does is that now we all know that liquids is not a compressible material. Liquid cannot be compressed. It's got to go somewhere. And that's what these come in for. So you have pressure in here that keeps these conservapacks down in the ground at a depth that you want. And when an obstruction comes through and hits that, it creates a reaction that all the hydraulic oil has to go somewhere. So that's where these canisters come in. And that nitrogen is designed to push that back out so that you have constant trip force, you have constant force down on the ground, but it gives that an area of where if you do hit a clog of dirt or something and it pushes that up, it's got a place for that oil to go, and it maintains that force once it gets over. Goes back to its original spot. Why do you not see these 1870s out here? There's where you shut off the valves for the hydraulic oil. But can anybody tell me why you don't see these out here? Any guesses? Salesman didn't push them. That's pretty much I guess a big reason. It's expensive. It's very expensive. It's very expensive. That's why you don't see them very much at all around here, because a lot of farmers don't like to spend a lot of money. So they go with the 18. They're fine with that 1830 or 1890. Now the 730 LL, something that who's heard of this before? Anybody heard of this air seeder before? It goes a little bit in detail in that class. These are where the row units are. This is the seating units on the very back. It's not packer wheels. Why would they put that all on the back? I think I got another picture here. I couldn't get a good picture of the front, but they use the double disc openers, just kind of like what a planter uses. And it's got the gauge wheels here. And the gauge wheels kind of act as a pack wheel as well. Do you guys kind of see what's in front here? Can you make that out on this picture? It's a terrible picture. Maybe you might see it over here. You guys heard of a chevron basket? A chevron basket that's on like a vertical tiller. It's like a Landau's got it on their vertical tillers. It's a long basket, and the reason it's called chevron is because the bars that are at an angle, it's not just straight across, they're kind of at an angle. The reason for that is that so that at any point in time, if you had a bar that was straight across, you would have bar, space, bar, space, bar, space, in the ground. A chevron is designed to always have a bar contact on the ground. Because if you have straight bars that go across, your baskets are just going to go up and down, and that chevron's supposed to make it smooth. So if you see like a Landau vertical tiller, or maybe even a tillage, they'll have that chevron baskets. You'll see the bars that are angled a bit. And in front of that, it's like sweeps. Tills up the ground. It kind of acts as a secondary tillage tool and an air seeder all in one on one tool. So come through, you got a little bit of weeds, no problem. That'll take it out. It'll put the seed in, no problem. So what's the advantages over this? Of having a less trips across the field, less compaction, right? That's exactly right. It combines that tillage tool in with an air seeder. Why do you not see these out here? That's right. It's very expensive. They are very expensive with all that stuff on there. So most of this is AMS products here. I'm just going to go through a very brief. We're about done. You guys are pretty much familiar with all these different types of monitors. If you guys had to work with the ARM Command Center a lot, the newest tractors have those on them, R series. Most of the customers I work with have this, that, and a lot of them have this. I hate this one. I'm not used to it. You like those?
They were really neat back in the day.
See, I like the touch screen and the colors and the bigger screen. And this one, I just haven't had much time to really mess with it. So it's a little difficult for me to navigate through compared to one of those. But those are the monitoring systems. That works for any type of guidance and all that stuff. If you guys had to work on a lot of that stuff, you work a lot with these monitors nowadays. Instead of AMS specialists would come out and do some stuff, but I mean, as technology has gone throughout the years, you're starting to see more stuff on this monitor than setting an SCV or am I right?
Turn in the command arm is in there.
Turn out what?
Well, the command arm, everything's in there for the tractor.
Yeah. Like here. The thing is that I've noticed that with these new tractors, there's 10 different ways to do the one thing. You can either go through here, you could go through here. There's so many different ways that you can do that. And it's amazing how everything is all controlled electronically now. And through that screen so coverages, WAS and SF1s. I didn't quite understand any of this when I first got on, and I had someone explain to me, think of it as you're shopping for buying a TV package. You get just basic, it's the WAS, and you got a few local channels. You get SF2, and then you get Comedy Central and History. And then you get RTK, and then you have Prime Time and movie channels and all that stuff. That's kind of how I first learned how they were. Each step you go down, they get more and more expensive. Starfire, the first one was the 300. Any of you had the opportunity of working with those? You? 3000's come a long way from that, right? Pick up more satellites. What do they call them? GLONASS, Russian satellites. 24, I think, total now. Something like that. So, not just seeding tools, but a lot of the AMS equipment that's starting to get tied in with all this. So, it's definitely been, and I can't really say much because I haven't been around these for very long, but some of you older gentlemen would say that, I mean, how much of technology improved over the years? Is it improving? Complicated? For you guys, I love technology. I like to go through that stuff. But the thing is that there's that example where I find that brown box is a lot more complicated than the 2630 for me, where it's vice versa for you, right?
I mean, the touch screens are easier to navigate. And I've had trouble navigating with the brown box too, but it's,
Yeah.
on the stuff when that was new, I mean, that was, state of the art at the time.
Yeah. You guys have more and more customers that are. Do you guys still have customers that are doing row markers now still, or not using guidance or anything like that? That's kind of the way they are in Flagler. They're just starting to sell the 2600s. So over the years, I mean, it's amazing how fast that technology, I won't say improved, but is grown, advanced. And have you guys watched that Farming Forward video from John Deere? guys should check that out. That's like, guys watch Iron Man, the movies. Not like the old shows, but the new ones that came out with, well, like watch it. It's on YouTube. You get on the John Deere channel, watch Farm Forward. And it kind of shows kind of what they mean by the farm site strategy that they're going on. I'm really excited about that. But anyway, so that's about all I got here. So I just wanted to say thank you to... Thanks everybody for coming out. I appreciate you guys coming out, taking time off your day. Next month we'll be kind of more in depth with the technical side of these air seeders, and I'll try to work a little bit more with the air cart, things like that. So if there's any type of things that you want me to cover, let me know. This is my first time ever doing a thing like this, so I was sitting for several weeks trying to figure out what I was going to talk about, and so I know this one was probably a little boring for you because it's not quite technical or hands-on like it. But if there's anything that needs to be changed, anything that I need to cover, tell me what your guys' common issues are. What are you guys working on a lot? Either email me or call me. You guys all got my card and everything, so that's about all I got. So let's see here. It's 2:23, so we got the full 2 hours in pretty much. So I want to thank you guys again for coming out, and I hope you got a lot out of it. So it's pretty much done. Drive home safe, and happy holidays, I guess. Happy Thanksgiving, because I won't see you till before Christmas. So, thanks, guys.